everyone, this is Tarzina 33, Laura Francesca, talking to you guys about the astro weather and what do we got going on with the moon in Scorpio. Okay, right now it's about to wrap up and it's doing a lot of things, and I want to talk about also about what is going on before the full moon. Okay, so let's head there. Welcome to the Astro Weather of Star Zenith 33, Laura Francesca here. Um, and I wanted to talk about what is going on before the full moon, okay? And I decided to jump on here. I was going to do another episode on another podcast of another topic, more with self-help and so forth. But I decided to jump in here because, everything that revolves around us has to do with astrology and its frequency and so forth. And, because the moon is in Scorpio at 26 degrees of banks, 26 degrees of wealth, um, it's important because we're pretty much thinking about assets, real estate, anything that pertains to money. I know I was, just sharing a couple of just topics on avocados and this fun competition in Mexico is no big deal, but it is just, that's what it is. It's fun competition between this city called Michoacan and Jalisco, right? So I think they're students in college or something, and they're competing over avocados, right? And that's what they do in Mexico. It's very competitive. So, but we all know, okay, the green avocados, they get exported through Michoacan, and that's the place where the avocados come. And but Jalisco also, it is another part in Mexico that's very well known. Is very well known for the tequila, and is very well known for um, pretty much tequila and birria. Okay, the Mexican food, mariachis, is very known in Jalisco. I'm from Jalisco as well, from my father's side, and although I was born here in the U.S. And so, very traditional, in Jalisco. I do plan on visiting there. Right now, right now it seems very kind of chaotic down there. So I'm waiting for it to calm down a little bit. And when I feel safe enough to go and travel there, I would love to go travel to my father's town. So yeah, so it's interesting. I seen the article, I shared it, and what was going on, and also because I was sharing maps. Okay, I've been doing a lot of maps, and I just love maps. Okay, I don't know if it's my Neptune and Sagittarius, that has to do with anything with countries and international, or it could be my North Node. Okay, my North Node is in Capricorn, and it has to do with business, but it is at the 13th degree of travel, but it also is in the ninth house of countries. Okay, so when you have the North Node in the ninth house of countries, your voice is heard around the world. And I had mentioned before that I am Billy Graham as well. For you guys that don't know who Billy Graham is, he was this preacher, international preacher around the world, and he advised politics and politicians. He would pray at the White House, and he would advise celebrities. He would advise everyone. So his voice was heard around the world, and he saved people to come to God. But he was very much influential. Okay, so when you do have the North Node in the ninth house, you do have the responsibility uh, to pretty much influence, okay, and speak around the world. So when you speak, the world listens. And so, I have it also. And what I do is I use my podcast as a platform in order to speak to countries in two different languages. I have not been doing the Spanish podcast because other things have gone in the way, but I am going to be jumping in that and do that as well. I need a schedule for that because it can get, Spanish and English at the same time. It could be a little bit more work, but it's so worth it because I see the difference. Okay. When I do a Spanish podcast, I see the difference. And this is not my first time. Okay. My first time at Podbean, yes, but I've been a podcaster before. I was at Swellcast and I was there for about 3 years. And before I shut down, I filed bankruptcy. So, um, when I was there and I was looking at the algorithms of when I didn't speak Spanish, the podcast it would just kind of stay in limbo. It would not really, the numbers would not really go high or anything. But when I would do a Spanish podcast, all of a sudden, for some reason, it reached like the next 1,000 views on there, which would be like downloads here in Podbean. And it, like, really fast, really, really fast. And I was like, whoa, so I could tell that I did have an audience in Spanish, okay, from around the world, usually, Latin America. A lot of people from like Colombia and Argentina and Guatemala and Puerto Rico and Mexico and a lot of these Latin countries and Mexico. Mexico is not Latin, but it's more over here on towards the United States. But it was internationally all over the world, and I noticed that. I was like, wow. So this is why with Podbean I decided to make two channels, because I seen the algorithm before, at a different platform, and how fast it would rise, right? I didn't have two channels there. I only had one channel, and I combined both of them on the same channel, which is not really good for, the algorithm, because you can't really tell where your numbers are coming from. But I did notice when I would just podcast in Spanish, I had way more views. And that is because, especially here in the United States, the Latino GDP is 4.4 trillion. That's huge, okay, when it comes to numbers. That's huge when it comes to, your money, your earning power, right? As a bilingual, especially in a language that is much in demand, which is Spanish, right? And that's just here in the United States, okay? So it's a big number to grab, and if you know Spanish, and not just know Spanish and just put it on the shelf, I also invested in high school as one of my credits to learn Spanish, because my Spanish was very um, just very rural. You know, my Spanish was it was not too professional. And so I wanted to speak professionally Spanish, especially if I was going into the business industry, which was importing, international trade, and so forth. So when I was in high school, I took Spanish, and my teacher was a Spanish teacher from Spain. So he taught us the right way. He taught us poetry and, just very, elevated type of Spanish. And I knew that I was going to use Spanish for something later on in the world, right? And it's still a little bit, I mean, it's not perfected, but you guys understand what I'm talking about. If you guys know Spanish and you guys listen to my Spanish podcast, you guys know what I'm talking about. You understand it, right? But as I do it more, I actually practice more the Spanish on there, because I actually, to tell you the truth, when I do Spanish podcasts, I get a little bit of anxiety more than when I do the English ones. Okay. And so, because I tend to kind of get stuck, but I don't care. I'm not trying to be perfect. It is what it is, right? So anyway, enough of that. Let's jump into the astro weather here with the moon in Scorpio. Okay, the moon in Scorpio, as I mentioned, is in the 26th degree of banks, of assets, real estate, land, money, okay? And it's in the 11th house of community. So right now, community is very important. It's so interesting that I think about 15, 20 minutes ago, I heard some fireworks. And I don't know what was going on, because my dad's watching the news, right? So, and I think the news is it's called Azteca, so it's news from Mexico, and then you'll see that in the cable. They have he likes news from Mexico, So they were talking about Dallas, Texas, and I don't know if it's true or if propaganda or not or whatnot, but they said this apartment complex burned in fire. It blew up, and people died inside the complex, right? And this happened in Dallas, Texas. So as I was in the kitchen and I looked at that, I was like, that's interesting. And they're interviewing Latinos, right? I think it was more on the more poor town of, I don't know what Texas look. I've never been to Texas, so I don't know what parts are good, what parts are not. But it looked like there was a lot of Latinos, and it didn't really look in the best location, but it said Dallas, Texas, right? And they were interviewing them, and stuff like that. So I passed through the kitchen, and then I heard a bunch of fireworks. So I was like, are those fireworks? I hope so. So I went outside my balcony just to go check them out. And yeah, they were like giant fireworks. So I don't know why they're blowing up fireworks, but they look really pretty though. I'm not gonna lie. They were like those giant ones, right? And I know we're not having an event today. Well, actually there was, but not where I live, right? I think there was like a dating event or something more in towards downtown San Pedro, um, like a speed dating kind of thing. Um, but nothing other than that. So I don't know what's going on. So anyway, I'd seen the fireworks and I was like, interesting. And that was right when my dad was watching the burning, the fire of in Dallas, Texas. So there's something that's happening in your community, okay? Because the moon in Scorpio has to do with passion, okay? It has to do with passion, mm, at a degree of Taurus. So it has to do with land, it has to do with passion in the 11th house of community. And when it's in the 11th house of community, is we participate, okay? That's the motto. So it represents anything with our community circles, our friends. It has anything to do with social standing and social organizations, humanitarian efforts, charities, reform, anything that has to do with philanthropic organizations as well, and how we express ourselves creatively as part of a group. Okay. The awareness of unity in a larger community, and how we come together, how we solve problems of concern for all. Okay. And it also has to do with truth, with um, ideas, and also taking action such as politics, social advocacy groups, and so forth. Which is so interesting because, like I always say, I don't really like getting into politics, but everything surrounds politics. Every decision that we do, you know, um, whether it's moving to a location, right? If we move to a different city, most likely we want to move into a city where there's not a lot of drama, where it's at least peaceful. At least we like to be peaceful, right? And a lot of it revolves politics, right? For example, here where I live, I've been living here for with my parents for 15 years, okay, and here in San Pedro, California, and we know it's very Democrat, right? And I don't consider myself a Democrat, and I don't consider myself a Republican, okay? I'm for the people that are doing good. It's not of either party because we know both of them fail, right? And they fail us all the time. So my thing is, as long as you're doing good for the community, you're doing good for the people, I'm for you, right? It's not whether you're Democrat or Republican. And so I guess, I'm for myself. But that's what I do. For me, I care a lot about how Republicans or Democrats, how they care about people, the actions that they do, okay, not the inaction that they do not do, okay. So and I do live in a Democrat city, and I know it has not been the best for me. It really has not. I don't know if it's because I voted for Donald Trump. I don't know. Or I helped him influence, but everything was fated. He needed to be president. I'm not going to go into that anymore, but he was supposed to be. It was fated. Another thing too is that it just hasn't been too much support. And that could be another reason also why people like to move to locations where they are supported. Mm. Where they are supported, and if you're not supported in the community, it's kind of more difficult for you to encounter opportunities, for you to make a difference, for you to when intentionally you want to do good for the community, right? You want the goodness for other people. It's not all about you. But sometimes you could end up in a city, for instance, it might be all Democrat, right? And you're not supported, and so even though you have good intentions, right? And that needs to change, but politics is very much involved in every decision we do, whether it's where we shop, where we live, anything, who our friends are, who our circles are, our communities. That's all 11th house. Okay. And so there needs to be a change in that, because if somebody has good intention, they should be having opportunities just like everybody else, or else it's called racism. Okay. Or else it's called not having an equal opportunity, which is illegal, right? So that's why I said politics is around, it's around everything, and I had mentioned earlier that one of the reasons that, blacks, um, pretty much ran through the Red Sea parted for blacks in Hollywood when Obama became president. Okay, so they were under his wing, and that he had promised that if he became president, he was going to give a lot of opportunities to a lot of black people. Because in Hollywood, it was really difficult for black people to enter Hollywood. It really was. Okay, it was not what it is today, and a lot of it, I don't know if it was racism. I can't really think that back, but before Obama became president, there wasn't really a lot of black actors. They had the A-listers like Denzel Washington. He's black, right? um, Oprah Winfrey, but they had to be in these big circles. But other than that, like, other actors, like young actors, it was really hard for them to break through, and until Obama became president. Okay. When he became president, then the Red Sea parted and they all went in there, right? And then you started seeing also commercials, you started seeing ads. And there's nothing wrong, with black people or nothing. I'm just saying, we've seen a very, black people were very much in demand. They were everywhere. Everywhere you look, it was like an ad for a black person. YouTube ads, campaigns. You've seen them as models. Clothing, like movies, everywhere. And I don't know, but I'm a Latina, Mexican, Hispanic American, born here. And I was just like, where are people? Because I don't see my people, I don't see my people at all, right? And that was promised under Obama, that he was going to bring opportunities to Latinos, and I did not see that. Okay. And so, they can promise you the world, but we should not be putting leaders on a pedestal. And I did talk about my podcast, if you do want to go back there and read on the 33 blockages of your abundance and your prosperity, of not putting people on pedestals. Because if you do, then you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be disappointed because they're not going to meet your expectations. And we should never put anybody on the pedestal. Put yourself on the pedestal. Okay. It's kind of like, when you see like a basketball player, and I know everybody was like a fan of Kobe, right? He was the world's greatest basketball player, besides, Jordan, right? And other basketball players, Magic Johnson. But everybody was into Kobe. He's the millennial type of athlete that everybody, gets inspired by, and so forth. And a lot of us put Kobe on a pedestal. And he did do a lot of good, I do have to say, especially where when he lived, I think he lived in Newport Beach, and he was doing a lot of humanitarian work over there as well when it came to like trying to rescue people and save people. um, I think I read somewhere that, or I think it was a video or something, where I think they ran over some, I don't know, or they almost ran over somebody. He got in the middle of the street and in Newport Beach or something, and he saved. Um, I don't know if it was a kid or if it was somebody. He did something heroic, and he got rewarded for it. But he just said, I just did the right thing, man. That's what I did. That's what I do. And that's very Virgo, by the way. And I think he's a Virgo. And so, very much being of service. So he could have been like a police officer or something like that, because that's what Virgos, normally Virgos are police officers, because they're here to protect and serve, right? So, it's just interesting. But we always admire Kobe. We put him on a pedestal and everything. But there were times that he was going to disappoint us, especially during games and so forth. And we can look at an athlete and we could cheer the athlete, right? But when it comes to our lives, why do we not cheer for us, right? And we can't always be disappointed with ourselves, right? I know we do look towards celebrities, or well, not so much now, but we used to look at celebrities to get motivated. Oh, we can do that. And I think if you do see somebody, you get motivated. If they can do it, I could do it. And I think that's why we always admired Kobe, because he was able to accomplish great feats that other people would not be able to accomplish. And so that's inspiration. But a lot of times is if we focus too much on them and not on us, we have to say to ourselves, why are we not doing something similar? It doesn't have to be exactly like Kobe, but why are we not doing anything in our lives? Right. And so we can get distracted when we put people on pedestals. We can focus so much on them and that we don't accomplish much. So, my advice is, don't stare too much that you get blind, okay? That you blind yourself and you don't do anything, you don't accomplish anything. It's good to get, it's good to get inspired, get inspiration. Maybe you have a creative block, right? We all do. And you want to get inspired of what they're doing. But right now, it's so hard to get a creative block. Because why? Because we have AI, right? If you do have a creative block, you can just go to ChatGPT or Claude or any of those sites, and you can ask, I have a creative block and I'm doing this and this, and I don't know how to get out of it. Can you give me some inspiration? Give me some ideas. And oh boy, well, they give you ideas, right? You'll have to probably print so many pages of so many ideas. I know when it just started out and I was asking ChatGPT, I was like, whoa, 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 okay, stop. Because it was giving me so many ideas. Now I know how to work it better. And eventually with time, we're going to be able to know, you know, what type of information we want. But at the beginning, I didn't know how to work with AI. And it gave me so many ideas that I got so inundated. And the way my mind works is, you can't feed me so much, because, well, I have ADHD, but um, if you feed me too much, I might not do anything. And so for me, especially, that also when I'm investing in some kind of service or webinar or something like that, like they say, okay, well, if you get this too, and then this and then that, and I'm like, nope, I say no to all of that. I'm going to focus just on that one thing that I want to do, that I want to learn, and that's it. And then I'll go ahead and sign up for something else, you know what I mean, that I might need. But that's not how my mind works. So with ChatGPT, when it barely began and I was using it, it was giving me so many ideas. But you can just highlight, the best ideas. You don't have to use everything, right? But ChatGPT can help you, overcome that creative block. So, so those are some of the things that, don't just get inspired by people, get inspired by yourself, what you are doing, what you are creating, right? And if you do have a creative block, then you would have to look in astrology, it's the fifth house, right? And how it's placed, and maybe there's a square with some transit that's going on. So it's good to look at that, Um, and when it comes to your body, it's the sacral chakra, like where your stomach is, or right below your belly button. And that's the creativity there. Okay. And also, it's the color orange. Okay. So you might want to wear a little bit more orange, or maybe eat some oranges. Okay. Or when you are doing some marketing, add some orange to it, because when you unblock that creativity, and this is something that I also wanted to talk about, I learned last night. I guess I was on a Substack, and I seen this really amazing article. I've been seeing some really amazing things on Substack that I don't see on Medium or other Medium blog posts. Or but anyway, this it was from an astrologer, and I forgot her name, but it was an astrologer, and she was talking about the sexuality of the fifth house. And why am I talking about this? Probably because the moon is in Scorpio. Okay. When the moon is in Scorpio, we talk a lot about sex. We talk a lot about, of course, if you're below 18, you probably should not be listening to this episode here. But I mean, I'm just, we're all adults here, right? And so she was talking about the creativity in your sacral, and also your root. Okay, your root chakra, which is your private parts, right below your private parts. And that's the root there. And the sacral is right below your navel. And both of the root is where the money's at. Okay. And the right below your navel, that's the creativity, that's your sacral. So if you notice a lot of celebrities, I've been watching this. Well, I don't really watch celebrities, but every time you see a celebrity, they're always, even Oprah did this, touching their stomach. They touch their stomach, like where the sacral is, right below the navel, your belly button. And they would touch it when they take pictures. And I think that's like a sign, don't touch my stomach. And I think, that happened to Nicole Kidman and Salma Hayek, you know. And they had this video, and Salma Hayek touched Nicole Kidman's stomach. Like, just, I guess she just like kind of like moved her hand around there. And Nicole Kidman got mad, you know and I think she told her, "Don't you ever touch my stomach there, or don't you ever touch something," like very like diva. And I think Summer Hayek was like, "Wow, well, I guess I didn't think she was gonna get mad at what." And so she did not want her to touch her stomach. She did not want, you know. I think she was probably trying to take her creativity out, because everything's frequency. Okay, everything's frequency. Even celebrities protect their sacral, right? They don't want you to touch it, even if you're wearing clothes, right? So anyway, so that's frequency, and you don't want your creativity to go, because when you have a creative block, or you can't seem to create, think about creation like creating a baby, right? And a lot of those females, I speak because I'm much more older, but those females that are trying to have babies and cannot have babies, right? They have some sort of problem with their sacral, okay? Of not being able, because it's the creation, is what you create, not only a child, but also art, but also creativity, also your work, right? And so it's important, if you do have a creative block there, so you can unblock it, right? And that's why you're not as creative. That's why something's holding you back. And so you got to unblock that, right? It could be through exercise. It could be, it's so funny. I don't consider that I have one, to tell you the truth, because I'm always coming up with ideas, especially right now because of my astrology. I have a lot of air. They're all either doing trines or sextiles. It is a whole party going on. But I don't even know what to choose. I just go with the flow because, I can get very overwhelmed of, you know, when you have a lot of trines, and it's a great thing, believe me. It's better than squares, right? I'm glad that I'm not dealing with squares anymore. But it's interesting because now I'm in my good era. But I had to go through a lot of bad stuff in order to get to the good era, right? I've been waiting for this moment, and I'm here now, right? So and so I focus on that, but I don't think I have a creative block or nothing. Sometimes I am a little bit tired. I do have the 12 house in Aries. Okay. So that can bring those that have Taurus risings. We're probably feeling a little bit more tired because we have the Aries in the 12th house, right? Or it could just be that you like to travel, or you want to get some rest. Maybe you want to commune with God, you want to meditate, you want to go within, right? So then you could go out and express yourself to the world, right? So when I'm not podcasting a lot, is because I'm just meditating with God. I'm drinking my teas. I'm doing a lot of self care. I actually just bought a an exercise, one of those plates that you put your feet on there and it shakes all your body. I'm so excited because it's so fun because I don't go to the gym, but you know I can get on that plate, and it's so good for the body. It's so good. And then some people say they even lose weight. And it helps to move your stomach where your sacral is. So if you feel blocked, I feel that that plate can really help you to just get your get your movie get your body moving. I don't know why I say movie. Get your body moving, right? And another thing too, that I bought it also because I'm so afraid of getting sciatica. That is one fear I do have. I'm trying not to focus too much on it, but I had sciatica when I was going through my Saturn. When it was Saturn, it was conjuncting my Mars, and it was squaring on my Libra. It was a mess, and I got sciatica, and I felt like a train ran me over. Okay. I couldn't get off my bed. It was the most horrific thing that ever happened to me, and I don't wish it on my worst enemy. I don't know what happened, that I woke up in the morning and I couldn't walk. I woke up in the morning, I couldn't even get out of bed, and I was like, what is going on? Right? I didn't know what was going on with my body. Then later, it turns out that I found out after doing a lot of research, I found out I had sciatica, and it wouldn't go away. And it even my head, my neck, I couldn't even walk. I couldn't even look straight. I couldn't move my neck from side to side. I was like paralyzed. And I couldn't even eat. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even shower. I couldn't do anything. And I was like, what happened to me? And well, it turns out that that was sciatica, and it paralyzed everything, like from my neck all the way to my back. And they said it could have been worse. It could have went all the way past my butt and on my legs. They said, lucky your legs were not paralyzed, but it was just from the waist all the way up. And I just didn't know what it was. And I prayed, and I tried to do exercise, and then, but I found out later when I took medical astrology that if you don't move your body, okay, if you don't move your body side to side, or if you don't dance, or if you don't have sex, right, you're going to get sciatica. And sciatica is right below the lower, um, it's by your spinal cord, okay, right below, no, right before where your butt is. And just right there, the lower spine there. Okay, so that is where the sciatica is. Okay, that's where it happens, and it's so painful. And later I found out that it's ruled by Jupiter. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and so it's in Pisces too. So Jupiter is about having fun. Jupiter is about traveling. Jupiter is about movement. Okay. It could also be overindulgence. So you probably overindulge, or maybe not enough overindulgence. You know, it could rule candy and sweets and everything. But I don't think that brings things sciatic. I think is the lack of movement. Okay. So I remember when I got it, I was always sitting in my desk. I didn't really move a lot. I wasn't going to the gym or nothing. And I think I got it. I got it during the pandemic, the year before the pandemic. It was like in 2019. Yeah, and that's when Sagittarius was in Jupiter. So it was squaring on my Pisces, okay? And so it was like if you're not moving, if you're not dancing, if you're not you like just moving your body, just whatever it is, like you're a prime candidate for sciatica. And I will never forget how much in pain I was. And now I move. Okay. Now I move around. If I'm sitting more than half an hour, I'm like, okay, like right now I'm gonna do the podcast and I'm gonna get on the plate. They say you could use it before bed as well. And so it's something about the lymphatic drainage. It drains anything in your body as well that you're holding on to. And it does help you, with your waist. It helps you. They even said the stomach area, like some people have lost weight. Other people like just, it helps for your legs, your arms, everything. And you can even work out on that plate. So, I haven't tried it, but I'm excited to try it. I've been wanting to try it. And so that moves your body, it moves everything that's stuck. So that's a great thing to do if you don't go to the gym, and it's fun. It's fun. So you just hop on it and your body moves, it shakes all over. So definitely you will not get sciatica if you try that. um, so anyway, after talking about all of that, which I haven't even got to the astrology part, the moon here in Scorpio, it is doing a water trine, okay, a grand water trine. It is making a trine to Jupiter. Jupiter's in Cancer, okay, and that's a good thing. Drink some water. I love when the moon is trine Jupiter, because it's how we feel. The moon is in Scorpio, is very passionate, and it's in harmony with Jupiter in Cancer, which is another water sign. At 23, let me see if it's still, because I've been talking too much. I need to refresh on here and see, because sometimes it'll move. Um, no, it's still there. Okay. So the moon is in trine with Jupiter in Cancer at 23 degrees of innovation. Okay. And so when it's at 23 degrees, we could be our Jupiter right now. Jupiter, when it comes to families, it could be a little bit rebellious. It could be innovative. It can be, thought provoking. Maybe you might have a lot of ideas, for the family and so forth. So it's getting along really well. Okay. Where it's also making a trine over here. Um, let's see here. It's in Pisces. This one's important here because Nessus here is in Pisces, so it has to do with healing. So there's an opportunity right now to heal with the moon in Scorpio. Oh, and I wanted to do a separate podcast where I didn't want to talk about the article that I read yesterday, but how it pertained to the creativity, and that's because the moon right now is in Scorpio. Okay, so if you are doing some healing when it comes to Nessus and Pisces, okay, at 22 degrees, that's a father degree. You might be healing something to do with the father, something to do with the man, maybe a husband, maybe a boyfriend, or somebody that's serious, that was serious in your life, right? Maybe you got divorced, maybe you got separated, or it could just be a father figure or a grandfather, right? In the sign of Pisces. And there's an opportunity with the moon in Scorpio, okay? And it has to do with money, okay? The second house, okay? It has to do with value. And the model there is I have. So that's where Nessus is, where you heal in the sign of Pisces, okay? In the second house, that has to do with investments. It has to do with earning power. It has to do with money, banks, possessions. It could be even vehicles. It could also be your voice. Okay. And so maybe there's something that you need to express, okay, about a certain topic that you need to heal. And as it makes a trine to the moon in Scorpio, which, it's also healing, okay, there's an opportunity there where the moon is in Scorpio right now. It was on the 11th. Now it's on the 10th house. Okay. And that has to do with public participation. That has to do with I relate with the world. Okay. Anything with achieving recognition, ambition, promotion, the carrying out of responsibility. Okay. Achievements, applause, status, fame, all of that has to do right now with the moon in Scorpio. Okay. And so it's giving an opportunity to heal something to do with a masculine man in your life in the second house of money. For instance, an example could be my father, right? Um, it is what it is. He's not a millionaire and nothing like that, and I don't expect for him to be one. But there could be some healing there in the fact that he has not become a millionaire, and I seen his chart, and his chart is very powerful. This is why you have to know astrology or get your astrology chart read, because if you don't know, how are you going to grow? You know, we have to figure these things out because it's all frequency, and those that do know their astrology chart, they move different. Okay, they just move different than the rest. Okay, if you don't know your chart, how are you going to know how to make the best moves, how to make power moves, right? And it's all about alignment. As long as you aligned yourself with those power moves that are in your chart, that are with the transit, then you're going to come into opportunities. You're going to come into money. I don't know why am I hearing Ana de Armas? I keep hearing her name. It's really bugging me. um I know she's a Taurus, and she's Cuban, so I'm not even going to touch that subject. But this could be some karma she's getting anyway. So there's some, or you know what, maybe she was abused. Maybe she was abused because she does have Pisces. I think she's a Pisces North Node. I think she's a Pisces North Node. Yeah, she is. And so for her to be this celebrity, this actress, she had to go through a lot. Okay, it was not so easy for her. And something to do, when she did the movie Blonde, they actually filmed it here in San Pedro, by the way. They filmed it right by the streets that I walked through. They did. I was surprised, like, what, they're filming it over here? And the Netflix movie of Blonde, and they filmed it right where the streets where I walked through. And you know it's interesting because when I walk through, I still walk through there sometimes. When I walk there, I'm like, oh, this is that where they did the movie Blonde. And it always reminds me that because I seen her from far. Okay, they didn't let me get close to her, and I didn't want to get close to her. I just seen her from far, but she was wearing like a red dress with blonde hair. And I asked one of the security guards, "What is going on down there?" And he said, "Oh, they're filming Blonde." And I said, "Oh, okay." So that explained the oldie vintage cars that were like around the block and so forth. But it's kind of fascinating because when you see a movie, I've seen a lot of movies in our town because it's a town that they do a lot of films over here. So sometimes it's a little bit fascinating for people to just stop and look at what they're doing, and maybe they'll let you, maybe they will not. Okay, they will say you got to go, you can't see. But there's other producers and security and stuff that they do allow you to look at film sets and how they're filming and so forth. As long as you don't take pictures or something or videos. But you know me, I'm always taking videos. But I did see her from far, and I was like, interesting. And the apartment where Marilyn Monroe lived in the movie, right? And a little it kind of very ghettoish in that area there. But it was, I guess it was very real. I have not seen the movie, by the way. I don't want to see it. um, a lot of people did not like it. It was there were, I think there was a lot of abuse. And if you're an actress, you got to live out the part, right? So I could imagine what she went through. But that could be something here with the Nessus and Pisces. 22 degrees of male. Okay, these are males. um, especially because she wanted to imitate Marilyn Monroe so much, that she even had to get abused to fall in that, in that frequency of Marilyn Monroe, you know. And it's sad because that's usually what you got to do as an actor and an actress, to become the same identity of Marilyn Monroe, which was an abusive female that didn't get paid well, and they would always use her, and she had a lot of talent, but they didn't pay her what she is worth. And so I feel she needed to be more rebellious. She was a little bit rebellious, though, you know, um, especially meeting Queen Elizabeth. So anyway, so the moon here, it's giving an opportunity to heal something to do with fathers or boyfriends or husbands, or not getting along with father figures, or men in your life, or not ever able to find a partner. So there is some healing that can happen there when it comes to status. Okay, maybe the healing is that you need to elevate. Okay, that you need to elevate, and you need to be known, and you need to be recognized here with the moon in Scorpio. Okay, um, for the work that you've done, and you have not been recognized, probably because you either have a father figure or a husband or a boyfriend that needs to heal his money issues, or has not got recognized himself. So that trickles down to, if you're the daughter, if you're the girlfriend, if you're the wife, or something like that. A lot of times, a lot of women, they marry into relationships and they never get recognized. They never get the respect. Um, especially if they marry somebody that they were not supposed to marry. So then they get judged, for doing that type of decision of marrying someone that, like, you were more elevated. This is why I feel that you should never marry below you if you're a female. And it's not because you're all that. It's because this is what happens in society, that you will be judged. Okay. Like, what were you thinking marrying that person? Like, and things like that. People do judge, families, ancestry, they all judge. And it's none of their business, right? I mean, it's eventually it's your decision. But if you have not elevated to a place where you should be, right, like being like a homeowner, or I don't know, living in a better lifestyle, right? And this is not what you expected. This is why you need astrology in your life. Okay, this is why you got to know. Okay, especially with synastry charts, comparing two charts between you and your partner. But now there's this healing to do. It's too late now, right? You got, well, it's not always too late, but if you're older, there's nothing you can do. That's it. You know what I mean? You're going to be with that person for life, right? And all you got to do is just heal now, or change identity, right? Become someone else that you've never been. That's my recommendation. But if you're older, you know, it is what it is. It's what you accepted in your life, and you know, that's what happens there, right? So there's this healing. For me personally, I've changed my identity. I've changed my name, and I do get more respect because of that. I've also educated myself, and I've invested a lot, thousands and thousands of dollars in myself for the past 12 years. So, I do have a lot of experience in international trade and geography and all this other things that I've done in my past, and traveled to Mexico, and I traveled to Oklahoma. I traveled to, different places due to business. And I'm very proud of that, right? So it's not like I haven't done anything, right? or and just sit on it and be like, well, I guess this is just me. You know, a lot of people do that. You know, they sulk themselves and be like, this is just me, and I guess it is what it is. But no, it's not what it is. It is what you become. Okay, and so you change yourself and you change your identity. Okay, that's the fastest way towards healing. Because if you heal, we don't heal overnight. It's going to take a lot of years. So the faster to do it is that you have to change your identity. Okay, and so you got to collapse time. And for those that say, you know, sometimes, and there's not even no time. A lot of people say, well, in 3 years, I'll be in a better position. No, you don't have to wait 3 years. You could do it now, you know? And so that's why, you know, we collapse time, and there's no such thing as time. We can change like this right away if we change our identity and we change how we think and we change our lifestyle and so forth. And you know, it's rapidly, but you do have to be around the right people as well, okay, that have resources that are going to help you, and you have something to offer, okay. If you have something to offer, they're going to want to work with you, right? They have no choice but wanting to work with you. So there's an opportunity there between the moon and Nessus there that's making that grand trine, okay. um, and then that Nessus is trining over here with Jupiter, okay, in Cancer, which is about luck and opportunities and blessings from God. And it's a great water trine, okay. um, let's see. So I do love water trine, especially when it's in water. It's very much about feelings. You know, maybe you want to cry, maybe you want to shed a little tear of happiness or joy, or anything, you know. That's what we have right now. It's already been an hour there. But I just want to talk about this water grand trine happening. I am going to jump on the podcast and talk about the full moon in Sagittarius. That one's really important. That's going to be on Sunday. And so, yeah, so that's what I had to talk about. And I have more to talk about. Something in regards to the article that I had learned about um, creativity. My book fell. That's interesting. My book fell. Uh, with creativity, and it has to do with the creative and understanding that if you have a creative block, you're not going to make money. Okay, because the money comes from your creativity. That's where the money comes from. Okay, and if you have a creative block, if you're not speaking or you're not creating anything, you're not making money. Okay, that's where our money's at. And there's more to that. Okay, I'm going to do another podcast, another episode on that. Very fascinating stuff that I learned. um, I'm going to end it here, and I do want to let you guys know also about the website at www.starzenith33.com, and where you can go in there, and if you do want a reading, you can schedule an appointment for a reading there. I have several charts where I read. It's not just um, your natal chart. It could be like maybe you're traveling somewhere, and you know there's relocation charts and astrocartography charts, and just all kinds of charts over there. So if you want to go take a look at that as well. And if you did like the episode, do like, do share, do subscribe, and let your friends know, because you know every time I talk here, I don't know what I'm going to say. Okay, it's not scripted. I don't have my notes with me or nothing. It's just I look at the wheel and wherever it goes. Okay, wherever it goes. So and I also do the Spanish one. So if you do know Spanish, okay, I would suggest you also listen to the Spanish one, because sometimes I will forget to speak on something in the English podcast and I'll say it in the Spanish one. Okay. And that's only because I forgot to talk about that. And when you listen to the Spanish one, I will most likely say it on there. Okay. Um, and it's only because there's a lot of information, and, you know, sometimes I just tend to like not focus on that. I guess I would have to write in my notes if it's something important that I have to talk about. But other than that, you know, if you do know Spanish, it's a double treat for you because you can also listen in Spanish. So, anyway, I hope everybody's having a great day, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day.